Hi, everybody. I'm Coach Geordie, the head coach of Ottawa Swimming, and today we're going to take a look at some open water swimming. First of all, let me just talk about this photo for a second, because it's the one time in my life I took a good photo of open water swimming. If it's raining out, if there's no risk of lightning or thunder, go for a swim because it's so beautiful. You're getting wet anyway. Anyway, we're going to talk about open water swim. I've been doing these seminars for 20 years. I did my first triathlon in 1986. Went to Age Group Worlds in 2008, did an Ironman. Been coaching for over 20 years. And so hopefully you'll gain a few nuggets from my talk today. As we do the talk, I'm going to approach and change our slide. So as I just mentioned to the audience, the live audience, it's a major multimedia production here. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the pool versus open water and what you can do in your pool swims to prepare for open water, because there are some things. The first thing, what's the big difference? Well, there's no line on the bottom of the lake, right? So direction is your number one. Getting used to the darkness. Some swims, it's crystal clear. You'll see the bottom. Some, it's darkness. So you have to get used to that. In some cases, i.e. the Rideau River in the Ottawa area, there may be weeds reaching up. It's a whole horror story. That's why I'm here. You have to get used to the temperature and maybe, depending on the winds or your location, get used to some waves. Most of that happens just by normalizing open water swimming. I always like to say to swimmers that if you're preparing, let's say you're preparing for a triathlon and you only ever ride your bike indoors, never outdoors, but you do an open water swim 3 times a week with a bunch of friends. When you ride your triathlon, it's not going to be the swim that you have anxiety about. It's going to be the bike, because you can normalize open water swimming. The more you normalize it, the more comfortable you'll be. So in the pool, what can you do to prepare? Practice your sighting. I'm going to talk about the different methods of sighting a little bit later in the talk. I'm going to talk about settling. So you can do sets in the pool that help you to work your mental muscle by calming yourself down. At the start of an event, your heart rate will be high even if you're just standing there, because adrenaline and will be having an effect. So in the pool, you can simulate that by going hard for 25 meters and then pushing off the wall and recovering actively and calming yourself down. After a hard 25, your heart rate will be up, your breathing will be a little bit more shallow. And instead of stopping, that simulation of the effects of adrenaline and simulating the start of a race, then you can just calm yourself down. Meditate, work your mantras, and just find your groove. The last thing is cornering, and in a pool, it's a little bit challenging, but what you can do is try to do a no-touch turn. So you come in along one lane rope, and then you do a big sweep and draw, and try to turn yourself around and get yourself going the other direction without touching the wall. If you can do a 180 in each direction, you're ready for a 90-degree turn in water. The translating your pool swimming to open water, let me just say, it requires translation. It's not the same language in a manner of speaking. I had a solid swimmer come out not too long ago, and at the end of the swim, she said to me, "Oh my God, I feel like I can't swim." But she's a solid swimmer. There's a lot going on that's going to throw you off until you normalize the open water. So the more you practice, the more you'll be able to take that great pool swimming and apply it to the open water. But be patient. The analogy that I like to use is that it's the difference between comparing, or the difference between road cycling and mountain biking. You're on a bike, you're turning the pedals, you've got hands on the handlebars, but it's a little bit different. So the first thing there's 6 skills that we're going to talk about today. The first is the start. First of all, when I used to do pre-race orientations, I would always, there's 2 main tips that I would share with everybody. And I would talk a lot. I talk about the whole, when I would do triathlon pre-game talks or pre-race talks, I would talk about everything to do with triathlon. But the two things that people would come to me after the race and talk about were, one, warming up, and two, cloud counting. We'll talk about both of these, the cloud counting a little bit later, but I know it sounds counterintuitive. You're getting ready for an endurance event, but I'm going to highly recommend that you add a little bit more exercise to your day. If at all feasible, and different race setups allow this, some don't, but get into the water before your event, if it's an open water swim or if it's a triathlon. Swim for 3 minutes, really, really slow. Go back to the beach. What that's going to do, it's going to set you up for when your event starts. If you are training for an event, it'll be a recommencement of swimming. It'll mitigate a lot of the issues that swimmers have at the start. You'll be more comfortable to starting. You'll be warmed up. You'll have a feel for the water. You will likely have activated your wetsuit again, which we'll talk about. But highly recommend that you warm up. Different events have different types of starts. First of all, not represented here. Not listed here is a rolling start. So rolling starts, let me talk about that first, and that's what's used at many of the Ironman, if not all of the Ironman events, I don't know for sure, but at Tremblant, for example, here in Eastern Canada, they do that. So a rolling start, one at a time, people cross the mat and go into the swim. This has helped a lot in a number of ways. It eliminates the crush of a big wave of people going into the water all at once. And it also helps the race organizers put more people on the course. So a rolling start, you're still gonna have to swim. You're still gonna have to find your groove. Other events will have wave starts. So small triathlons will start, for example, they'll start all the women in a sprint triathlon together, all the men together. Maybe there's going to be 20, maybe there's going to be 100, depends on the size of the event. And there's a number of ways you could do this. Sometimes it's from the beach. This is the classic image of triathlon, everybody running in from the beach. Sure, you can run in if you want. However, you don't have to. And if you wait 5 seconds and let everybody go, you can walk in nice and easy, splash a bit of water on yourself, and start in a more relaxed manner. That 5 seconds that you save could be the difference between 530th place and 531st place. So you make the decision. If you are a competitive athlete, then maybe you're going to get up front there and you're going to mix it up in the front row. And you're going to run in and do dolphin dives and try to get out front. There's something for everybody. So that's the beach start. In a shallow water start, this is the least common, is they'll get everybody in the water waist deep-ish, and then they'll say go. So you're just standing there until the gun or the horn goes, whatever, and you start to swim. Not unknown as well is a deep water start. So in some areas where they do an event, there is no beach. So you have to go in off a dock, you have to swim out, and you have to tread water or scull near in an organized area, and then the gun will go and you'll start to swim. So there's not much. I've talked about the methodology of the beach start. In a deep water start, if practicing as we do at the beach, there's a small technique, and it's one of these things that it just, there's methods that'll save you 2 seconds in a race that you do not have to learn. However, you know what? Why don't you learn it? It's just kind of fun. So hard to demonstrate here, but I'll give you an idea. In a deep water start, first of all, it's easier to tread water in a wetsuit because you got the buoyancy. But you'll sit down in the water and you'll just scull here. I always have my swimmers stick their toes right up. And then as the gun approaches, you roll over on your belly, and the gun goes, you start swimming. Just a small technique that's used by the more advanced athletes to make sure they're ready to go off. And if you want to learn it, you can learn it. It's pretty self-explanatory. One final word is on the mass starts or the wave starts is self-seeding. So I used to do all the swim starts in these waves of starts, and I can tell you that if you're in the front row and you are beside a guy that looks like Michael Phelps with shoulders out to here, and he's 6'5", take a few steps back because you're probably in the wrong place, unless you are like Michael Phelps, which maybe you are. Keep walking back until you arrive beside the guy who has Bermuda shorts and floaties on his arms, and then take a couple of steps forward. There's no perfect way to seed yourself. If you have a lot of pre-event anxiety and your nervousness, as many people do, you can go online and check the previous year's results of this event, of your age group, and look at the swim times and think of where you fit in. And then you can sort of position yourself in the group in that area roughly. But that's hardcore. So this generally, don't be too ambitious, but don't be too conservative when you place yourself. Because if you are, again, there's no perfect way to do this, the self-seeding. But if you're too conservative, then you'll be running into the backs of people. If you're too ambitious, people will be running into your back. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, well, I don't know, settling is really important too, but sighting, you got to know how to sight. Otherwise, your 1 kilometer swim, maybe 3 kilometers, you're going so crooked. The first thing I want to talk about here, a couple of good examples here. You don't want to have your head too high because your feet will drop. That is a pretty good, those goggles are just out. The other thing that you don't want to do, and I'll just, because this photo is so good, you don't want to breathe to the front when you're sighting. And I'll give you the demonstrations in a second, because you're heading that way and the water's heading at you. So you don't want an open porthole when you're coming right at the water. You want to keep your eyes low so the feet stay up and you keep your mouth closed. Breathing frequently. Let me handle that first. When you're in an event, if you're in an open water swim, and so I'm going to talk based on competitions or events, not competitions, on events a lot today. If you're just swimming out at the lake, then you'll understand the skills and draw that information out. But I want to make sure those training for events know these things. Breathing frequency. When you're in an event, the adrenaline is going to be high, the oxygen demands will be high as well. And so breathing every third stroke or bilaterally, so breathe in, blow, blow, breathe in, blow, blow, breathe in. That's great if you can do it in an event, but honestly, and maybe you do it in all of your swims. In an event, it's unlikely, especially in the first third of the event, you're going to be able to do that because of the effects of adrenaline. So make sure that you practice breathing every second stroke. So breathe, blow, breathe, blow. When I talk about the sighting, for the most part, I'm going to talk about that, about breathing every second stroke. So the first way to sight is what I call, or is it the otter method, which is a totally viable method. And so with the otter method, you swim, you find a nice groove, you settle, you relax, and you just keep swimming, and then you stop, and you come up like this, and you look around for the buoy, and then you start going in the right direction. So it's a viable option, but it's not a good option. There's better ways, definitely, than the otter. So the most intuitive way is to breathe and then glance. Let me talk about glancing for a moment. it's not an eye test. You don't have to read what's written on this big orange buoy typically that's floating on the water. You just need to piece together the picture. So don't sustain your high head. Just glance. So breathing and then glancing. Your head's out of the water when you're inhaling, so you can just arch and down. Breathe, arch and down. So it's inhale, glance, and then down. This is a very, very natural, like I say, it's what most swimmers I've worked with find the most intuitive. However, the extension rotation of the neck isn't the best movement pattern. And this also ever so slightly results in a slightly higher head. You won't see elite triathletes use that method. What most intermediate advanced elite triathletes do is they look first. So they push down a little bit with their front arm. They lift their head just here so they can see. And then they do one of two things. They will typically turn to breathe now, here, as they pull. So it's stroking, glance, breathe. So the opposite, glancing, then breathing. A method I highly recommend everybody try is skipping a breath. Again, this is based on breathing every second stroke. So skipping a breath, one of the keys to sighting in the open water, and one of the keys to relaxing in the open water, is to find a rhythm. When we meditate, it's all about counting and rhythms. So swimming is moving meditation, and open water swimming is intense moving meditation. There's a lot to deal with. So skipping a breath, if I do it slowly, you inhale. So let's say you do it every third breath. So it's breathe one, breathe two, breathe three, and now instead of breathing, we sight down and recommence breathing. One, two, three. Now instead of turning and breathing, we sight. So that's a method I highly recommend everybody try, because you can really find a good rhythm with that. When you're out in the open water, there will quite likely be, certainly if you're in a river or a lake, there's going to be something on the horizon beyond you. It could be trees, mountains, could be a house, it could be a tower, something like that. If you can orientate yourself to that thing on the horizon, let's call it a big tree, and you think that, okay, the buoy's on the water, but that big tree is so easy to see. When you just glance up on the horizon, you've got the horizon versus the sky, and there's more contrast. So you can spot those things quite easily. For example, a power, what do you call it? The towers that the power lines are. So when you glance up, you might not see the buoy because there could be arms, heads, bodies in the way. But if you just looking up on the horizon, you may be able to spot something like that, like a tree. So if you can get out on the course during a warm-up, you might be able to figure out what those things are, but more likely it'll happen during your swim. So horizon sighting can help as an additional means of navigating. Buoys are located in variable distances. Sometimes they're 50 meters apart and there's a ton of them. Sometimes they're 150 meters apart and there's not many. So, and your worst case scenario is if you're colorblind and it's orange buoys and yellow caps or something like that. So you need to piece together the picture. If you glance up, whatever method you're using, if you glance up and you don't see the buoy, don't panic. Don't go into the otter. So if you glance, you don't see it, that's fine. Take a breath, glance again, and build the picture. Don't panic. You're not going to go 100 meters the wrong direction in the space of 5 seconds. So piece together the picture. In the open water, as you practice, you're going to learn that you tend to draw to one side a bit or the other. Know your tendency and accommodate it. This will determine how frequently you sight. So if you're breathing every second stroke, if you can sight every 8th stroke cycle or every 8th breath, so 8 breaths and then sight, that's fantastic. You don't want to really do it less than that. However, if you find that you stray offline, then you want to sight more often, maybe every 3 or 4 breaths or stroke cycles. Stroke cycle is a stroke with each arm. That's a stroke cycle. So your frequency of sighting is dependent on how straight you swim it. If you can get to the point where you are in an event, remember, in training and an event's a different thing. Adrenaline levels are different. If you can breathe bilaterally every 3rd breath in an event, that balances out your stroke and you can go straighter. But again, you're dealing with the adrenaline. If you pull to the side, the chances are extremely high that you are crossing over as you swim. So you're coming in, you're crossing over with your arm. The typical circumstance is people will have a more powerful pull with their backside stroke. So they turn to breathe here, they cross over, and they do a bigger pull here and a shorter pull there. So it's big pull, short pull, and that causes them to go offline. So try to balance out your breathing and balance out your stroke so that your 750 meter swim is as close to 750 meters as possible. Although you never know. I was once in an international level event, and my 700, I swam straight line. This is before GPS. And my 750 meter swim, the course ended up being 1,200 meters because of the, just because of the tides. They didn't tell us, of course. They weren't surprised at that gem. So I talked about the effects of adrenaline at an event. Heart rate's high, and open water swimming is fantastic for your cognitive health and your mental health, because there's a lot to deal with, and it helps you with no other stimulant, because it's just you and bubbles, right? You really need to have the mantras and develop the mental approach that keeps you calm and allows you to overcome these challenges. So no matter if you're at the start line of an open water swim event or triathlon and your heart rate's not a little bit high, then you got to find something else to do, because I don't think you're healthy. Not normal. So find your mantras. Practice them when you don't need them. You're out there just swimming on your own with a friend. Whatever mantras work for you. Breathe and blow. Count strokes. Count breaths. Just work to calm yourself down. Here's the second thing. I talked about warming up as being the first key tip. The second one, and one that people came to me after races and said, "Oh my God, thank you. I didn't know I was allowed to do this," which is crazy, but it's when people are brand new to an environment, they don't know. When you're out there in the middle of the water, and if you are just unsettled, you need to calm down. Stop, roll on your back, look at the clouds, and do a little bit of elementary backstroke. So just sweep your hands forward underwater and just throw some water very, very gently towards your feet. You can either do a gentle flutter kick with your feet, or you can do I'll try to do it with my arms, a frog kick with your legs. Don't try to not lose time. This is about you calming down. I like to call it a spa moment. Just look at the sky, visually disengage yourself. from the stimuli around you. What will a lot of people do when they're unsettled? They'll go into breaststroke. Breaststroke's not as good an option because you still feel the rush. You're still visually connected with everything around you. Roll on your back, visually disengage yourself, look up at the sky, and calm yourself down, right? It's like being up at the top of a mountain. When you're up at the top of a mountain, nothing in the world seems as important anymore. So look at the sky and just get your bearings, calm yourself down. Then when you're ready, roll over and start swimming again calmly. You'll have a quicker time overall if you do that as opposed to trying to fight through that stress or discomfort. So I call it cloud counting. And that's another thing, I didn't list it as such, but that's another thing that you can practice in the pool, is just get that skill down so when you need it, it's there. Now, when I do a clinic or I used to do these pre-race talks. I used to have all the swimmers, so I'd have anywhere from 20 to 100 swimmers in front of me, and I would have them all put their hands up, and then bring their hands down beside themselves, and touch the person beside them on the shoulder, and then I would say, okay, there we go, we're all over it, we've all touched each other, because contact happens in open water swims. I would also do an oath. But I won't bore you with the oath right now. But lots of shtick, right? To try to ease the nerves a little bit, and get people talking, get people laughing a little bit. So here's the thing with contact in an open water swim: expect it. It's going to happen. Expect it, accept it, get back in your rhythm. Get back in your rhythm. Think about your breathing. Think about your mantras. Don't be freaked out by contact. If you're freaked out by contact, be freaked out about wet water. And contact's going to happen. It will be the vast majority of the times. It will be just nothing. It'll be a hand on the foot. It'll be a hand, your arm on somebody's foot. It's your hand on the back. It's the very rarest occasion where the contact will have any real effect, right? Maybe that person's hand will disrupt your positioning of your goggles. What do? Roll over on your back, fix your goggles, get back in the groove, calm yourself down, and think about it. If it is a mass start, a wave start, there's more likely there'll be contact then until people spread out. Again, one of the advantages of rolling starts, less to no contact at the start. The other time is corners. If you imagine you've got this width of swimmers, so they started here and they all sort of spread out laterally, and they're all swimming, but they're all heading to that one buoy for a right angle turn, right? And they turn. So it's at the buoys people will come back together. So anticipate the possibility of some contact there. Sure, you can go nice and wide around that buoy to minimize contact, but distance of time. So we'll talk about cornering in a second, but in the open water, when I do an actual clinic, we do a gauntlet. We'll have everybody swim through the gauntlet and have a bit of fun with some gentle contact. Again, like open water swimming, if you normalize it, it doesn't throw you off as much. So cornering, these are the buoys that I use in my own open water swims. When you come to a buoy, I understand the psychology. You are swimming from this buoy to that buoy. So you swim and you stop and you calm down. Don't. I understand that's the common psychology. That is a turn, all right? Imagine you're on an on-ramp. So I want you to come to that buoy, turn it, and swim. You know roughly where you're going after that buoy. It's going to be a 90-degree turn almost always. So don't lift your head. Don't start swimming like this around the buoy. Don't start doing the otter around the buoy. I want you to turn that buoy and keep swimming. So keep breathing and do a big draw stroke, or sorry, a sweep stroke, and then a little bit of a draw, and bring yourself around, and then take a number of strokes, 4 or 5 strokes, and then sight and fine tune. Don't use it as a rest stop. Don't use the buoys as a rest stop. But at the same time, anticipate that you'll have some company, right, at that buoy. You can breathe to the buoy. That way you can see it every time you're doing a stroke. I'll throw that in. I didn't mention this at the start, but when you're in the pool, try to breathe equal parts, both sides. I know one of the sides doesn't feel comfortable, but keep working on it until it does feel comfortable. Because in the open water, you may need it. It may be that there are waves coming in from one side. And if you can only breathe to that side, you're getting a face full of water quite commonly. Whereas if you can breathe to the other side, then the waves aren't going to affect you as much. So they'll be hitting you in the back of the head. Yeah, I should have picked a different way. There's lots of horror elements to this, right? Don't worry, it's a wave. It's just going to go over you and be fine. So that is cornering. Next up, we're going to talk about drafting. And I'm no like elite triathlete, but when I'm in a triathlon, I love to draft. It's entertaining. It gives me something to think about. Does it make me faster? Highly unlikely, but it's just a little game within a game. So can you save up to 40% of your energy swimming from drag? Science would say that. However, there's a lot of swimmers who will put so much effort into drafting, they'll be slower overall. However, if you can do it well, yes, you'll save a little bit. The elites will draft off the feet. So they'll be right behind another swimmer. And you know what they do? They follow the bubbles off of that swimmer. It's like reading tea leaves. If you can read tea leaves, maybe you can read bubbles. A much better option for the newer on-water swimmer is to draft off the hip. So if you position yourself with your head, when you turn to breathe, if you're looking at somebody's knee beside you, that is a good position because that swimmer is going to create a draft. And you're gonna tuck yourself in that draft. You don't want to be too far wide. You need to be quite close to them, but not close enough to disrupt their stroke. So you don't want to be touching them because you want them to go fast or their normal speed so that you can hitch a ride. The other big benefit here is when you turn to breathe, you're looking at them. You don't have to sight. With one caveat, you have to hope that the person that's doing the sighting knows where they're going, right? So, I have often joked about proposing to the international governing bodies that they add to the body marking. So body marking is done in triathlon and many open water swims. And they'll put the event you're in on magic marker on the back of one calf and your age group on the other. What I have jokingly proposed is that on the back of one foot, you put your swim pace, and on the other foot, you put your ability at sighting or swimming a straight line with a score between 1 and 5, 1 being outstanding, 5 being terrible. And that way, when you're swimming, you can grab a foot and see how fast, and then grab their other foot and see how well they can sight. Then keep going. But I keep threatening to send a letter to the international governing body, but I still haven't. I just don't think they'll go for it. So if you are drafting, just always remember that you don't want to slow down the swimmer. So you don't want to hit their feet. You don't want to disturb them. Nobody wants to have purposeful contact, right? But the final thing I'll say is the perfect person to draft off of is the person that's slowly passing you. Because chances are if you get on their hip and you maintain the very same exertion level, you'll probably go their speed. When you're drafting, remember to maintain good technique. So you don't want to keep lifting your head to see where they are, or your feet will drop. So talk a little bit about equipment now. First of all, we're going to talk about the other equipment. Goggles. So in open water, if you're swimming into the sun, so check the orientation of your course. There's a chance that you may be swimming into the sun. Mirrored goggles can help that a little bit. So you might want to acquire some of those. Nose plugs. I have a notorious nose and sinus issue until, small commercial here. So nose plugs. You can get the ones that are ubiquitous that go on top of your nose. Don't get the ones with a plastic bridge, because that's a fixed width and everybody's nose is different. Get one with a metal bridge, because that way you can bend it to be the right distance. If you're open water swimming with the nose plug, you'll probably come out of the water without it. You'll lose it. Yes, you can have the little rubber band that keeps it on your head, but that does adversely affect your streamlining a little bit. The sinus saver, my wife found these for me, and it's designed by a surfer, a rough water swimmer, and it goes inside the nostrils. And they vary in price, but they're on the expensive side. But fantastic, game changer for me. Earplugs. So some people just get bothered by water. Some people maybe they have inner ear issues where they just want to keep the water out. But some people suffer from vertigo in the water. And one of the causes of vertigo is an inner ear reaction to the cold water if you're in colder water. So earplugs can help you. If you get a little bit nauseous or have vertigo when you're swimming, or when you leave the water, try earplugs. There's two types that are common, and you can get them in almost any drugstore. There's the white silicone and the red silicone. Red silicone is typically aimed at children, but I have some friends that are cold water swimmers, swim all year round, even in Canada, and the red ones stay malleable at a colder temperature. So if you're under, I think it's 14 or 15 degrees, no, under 14 or 15 degrees, go for the red, or just try the red and maybe it will work well for you. The other thing is positional vertigo. So if you are, if you have eliminated this inner ear, the vestibular aspect, then it can be related in a way to car sickness. If our ocular nerve tells us we're moving, but we're not moving, but our inner ear doesn't feel movement, then it can cause some discomfort and potentially nausea. So my tip for you is when you're open water swimming, if you have this challenge, is try to focus. When you turn to breathe, don't just not focus. Try to focus when you breathe. Try to focus on something when you're not, when your head is down, and that can mitigate it a little bit. So earplugs. Very few swimmers I know use earplugs, but it's a pretty important issue, the vertigo or nausea. So I wanted to mention that here. Caps. Whenever you're in the open water, swim with a cap. Even if it's not, if it's warm, wear latex, it's thinner. If it's cold, wear silicone. You can double cap. If it is, I would say if it's colder than 13 degrees, then I recommend getting a neoprene cap that has the little chin strap. Get a bright color, yellow, orange, so you're easily spotted. you can double cap as well. It's another option. The final thing is a swim buoy. These are ubiquitous now. Back in the day, we used to call them rescue cans, and only lifeguards would use them generally, but also open water swimmers. Now you've got these amazing inflatable bags that you can put your wallet and keys in and take it with you instead of staring at the beach and hoping everything, your equipment's still going to be there and nobody's going to look inside your shoe for your keys. So I highly recommend getting a swim buoy. It just goes a strap around your waist typically. So the swim buoy, if you need a break, you can just grab it and float there. However, don't swim on your own. Always swim with a buddy. A swim buoy is not a buddy. If you have any kinds of issues, buddy needs to be there. Okay. And we move on finally to talk about wetsuits. You don't have to have a wetsuit. Now, if you have a really early season triathlon and the water is going to be cool. So for example, Vancouver 2008, 11.8 degrees, cold water. I arrived 5 days before the event. I went to Kitsilano. I tried to swim. I couldn't keep my face in the water. Hands were burning, feet were burning, headache. I went back every day, and by Sunday, I was fine. So the body will adjust given the opportunity. So if you have a cold water swim, get into the water regularly before that swim, and your body will adjust. Honestly, cold showers, that can help as well. Do you need a wetsuit? Obviously, in the cold water, you need a wetsuit. Do you need a wetsuit for most of the open water swim season? No. Already this season, it's 20 degrees in the water. Most people will be comfortable in 18, 19, 20 for a short swim. If you're doing 1,500 meters or more and the water's below 20, yeah, depends on, you may be a little bit uncomfortable with the temperature. To give you an idea, at 22 or 23 degrees in a official competition, wetsuits aren't allowed for safety reasons because of the risk of people overheating. So most times you don't need a wetsuit to keep you warm, but 90% of people at the start line of an event will wear a wetsuit. Why? Because it helps them to float. It makes it easier to swim. You're more streamlined because the surface of the wetsuit is more streamlined. And so there's a lot of advantages there. The disadvantage of a wetsuit is if it doesn't fit well, right? If you can't lift your arm all the way over your head, that's going to throw off your stroke a little bit. So make sure you get a well-fitted wetsuit. Another challenge for some people with a wetsuit is it has to have a pretty good seal here around the neck, and human beings don't generally like that, right? So that you have to get used to that as well. You can get a sleeveless wetsuit. This is what I use in competition, but it has to fit well because you've got another big seam here that needs to fit. We don't want excess water in our wetsuit. Let me talk about how wetsuits work. It's a wetsuit, not a dry suit, not meant to keep you dry. It allows a microfilm of water between you and the neoprene. The water heats up and has an insulatory effect. If there's all kinds of water pouring in your wetsuit because it's ill-fitting, it's not going to keep you warm, and it's going to adversely affect you. So if it fits well, then fantastic. You're not going to have an issue. It'll keep you warm. It'll keep you streamlined. It'll give you a lift. You'll be great. Buying a wetsuit is challenging because neoprene fits a little tighter. It loosens up in the water. So in a shop, it should feel a little bit tighter than it will when you're out in the water. That's why I try to find a shop that has really good sales staff and advisors, some expertise. One quick note on cold water swimming. If you do, it's highly likely that you'll never swim in a cold race, or if you're into hardcore winter swimming. But do know that if you get out of the water after a cold swim, you may have felt comfortable. Your body temperature will continue to drop. In fact, it'll drop precipitously after you get out. So plan for cold water swims. Make sure you've got your parka. Honestly, go with a parka and lots of warm clothes. Your care for a wetsuit. Make sure to rinse it after you swim. Hang it, don't fold it. Be careful, we don't want creases. Keep it out of the sun and the heat. And if it starts to get a little bit of smell, wash it into your tub with a little bit of baby shampoo. One of the other challenges of a wetsuit is putting it on. So if you're going to an open water event, arrive early. Well, really early, because you're going to have that adrenaline and the nervousness. Give yourself like a half hour just to put your wetsuit on, and try to make sure there's a buddy around, because and practice it at home. But it needs to fit well. But to fit well, it needs to be tight. Some quick tips on this: some wetsuits, when you buy them, they come with gloves. Why gloves? Because we don't want our nails. We don't want to put our nails into the neoprene, because you can cut it. So use your fingertips. Another tip is to have a shopping bag. Now, shopping bags are going to become harder to find. My house is out of shopping bags now. But if you put a shopping bag on your foot, then you pull the wetsuit up, that shopping bag plastic shopping bag, not paper, will help the foot and leg to slide through more easily. You can then put it on your hands as well. When you're fitting a wetsuit, make sure there's no wrinkles, but especially in the legs. You need to know where on your ankle, because it starts with your ankle. You pull it up on your ankle, and you should know where on your ankle that cuff should be. And then from there, you inch it all the way up, pull it tight on the crotch so there's no material wasted below the waist. And then you do the same thing on the arms. You should know where the cuff goes, and then pull it all the way up. We want the neoprene around the shoulders, okay? Buddy can also help you pull it up, and we don't want to be in this position, right? We want to be able to have good mobility. Same thing with the collar, position well as well, right? The next thing, now, if you're in a triathlon, you're going to want to get out of the wetsuit as quickly as possible. But first thing, transitions in a triathlon can be stressful. I've had people come to me and say, "I'm okay with the swim, bike, and run, but the transitions, But there's not a lot of skill in transition. There's a little bit, but really the skill is mental. Just stay calm. If you're in a triathlon, your body's just got accustomed to swimming for a while, and now it's horizontal. Breathe and relax, walk or jog to the T-zone. But a few tips on it. As you come out of the water, don't take your goggles off in your hand. You're gonna need your hands. So just put them on the forehead. As you exit the water, try to unzip the back, and then pull it down to your waist as you are making your way to the T-zone. When you arrive at your bike, then you can take it the rest of the way off. There's a few ways to do that. You can pull it down, and then you can step on it with one foot and pull a leg out. But honestly, I like to put my bum down and sit down and pull it off, because people that try to do the elite method tend to be hopping all over the place, and they're going to fall anyway. So you can, if you want to be competitive in a triathlon, regardless if you want to be competitive or not, practice it so you can at least stay calm, if not fast. So the wetsuit off, staying calm. You'll notice there's a big theme here throughout, and just to stay calm when you're swimming. To stay calm when you're putting your wetsuit on, stay calm when you're taking it off. But there are, of course, a lot of skills. One of the skills, hopefully, you won't have to face. is a fin in the water. So thanks a lot. My name is Geordie McConnell. I'm the head coach of Ottawa Swimming. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I wish you all the best with all of your open water swimming.